Hello and welcome to Oh the Horror. I'm Fedora, and it's my first review of 2017. And it's almost February. And speaking of me being a lazy sack of crap, I'm roping one of my friends into this review again. So, everyone say hello to the man who uses more green screen in 10 minutes than the Wachowski brothers have in their whole career. Him.
Man, this script is shit. And he seriously wants to review what is basically a full moon film? Didn't he finish his stupid-ass marathon already?
Well, I guess it's gonna be another one of those years. Well, with our resident sci-fi man among us, let's infect ourselves with another gem from Charles Band's pre-full moon days. 1982's Parasite. So, this movie starts in a mad scientist's laboratory who's kind enough to let us know he's doing something evil due to his taste in fluorescent lighting. But as he's microwaving himself up a Hot Pocket, he's jumped from behind and drops some kind of radioactive worm on himself, which burrows inside him and transforms him into Electroshock Therapy Man, with the proportionate strength of a lobotomy patient.
Yeah, if James Cameron threatened me with a lawsuit, I'd probably wake up screaming as well. Alright, so this is our hero for the movie, Dr. Paul Dean, played by Italian-American actor Robert Glaudini. Not to be mistaken here with his most famous role of Dr. Tweed from Grunt, the wrestling movie.
Hang on, Demi Moore's in this movie? And apparently it's her first starring role? Jeez, at least Leo DiCaprio can say people have at least heard of the shitty alien movie that started his career. Dr. Paul here is an ex-government scientist, now living with this worm parasite still buried in his gut, in the distant post-nuclear apocalyptic future of 1992. I'm guessing in this timeline, the Japanese Prime Minister really didn't like George Bush throwing up in his lap.
Hold on, wait a minute. A skittish scientist on the run from the government carrying a dangerous experiment inside of his body? Well, I guess now I'll get to debate which is the worst of a Hulk film that Demi Moore has starred in. Oh no, he stumbled onto a couple of rednecks attacking a woman. Where's Christopher Lloyd in a mechanical suit when you need him?
Let her go.
Whoa, I do what he says, guys. That's one of those 90s laser guns. You remember how deadly those things were. Turns out, though, he was just interrupting their S&M party, which at least earns him thanks from the old prospector here, who invites him back to his house for a coffee, and then kicks him right back out again after Paul says he only drinks organically grown loose-leaf tea.
And then the cast of the Mad Max porno spoof attacking him again, which ends with this guy being turned into a victim from every 3D slasher movie ever.
Then it's back on the road in this lifeless desert world, where he'll probably pass Jody and Reggie in a few miles hunting for the tall man. I remember back in the 90s when fuel only cost $40 a litre. The good old days.
He rents a hotel room for a few days from Vivian Blaine of Guys and Dolls in her sexiest role since Skirts Ahoy. And with some peace and quiet at last, he begins to work on trying to get rid of a parasite in his stomach.
Which so far hasn't done a whole lot besides give him nightmares and gas. A few miles back down the road, and apparently the men in black pull up at that same gas station, and this guy appears to be the same one who snuck up on Paul in his nightmare.
Why don't you, fill it up? Or I hope you got some money to pay for all this.
So this guy, I'm guessing, is a government agent sent to capture Paul. But let's not jump to conclusions on this. Maybe he's a decent guy. Take it like a man, you sissy. And 25 minutes in, Demi Moore finally makes her appearance, playing a local lemon grower named Patricia, who's getting quite a bit of trouble from the local Biff Tannen gang here, led by this dude named Rickus.
And we're not scared of him because he's dangerous and unstable, but because he's played by the guy who would later go on to write the Ghoulies franchise. Ugh.
After getting chased away by Demi, presumably after they mentioned Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, the gang then goes after Paul, and without his laser gun or slow motion fight choreography to help him out, he's quickly kidnapped and a canister he was using for study into the parasites is stolen.
There's something wet in here.
Well, Demi Moore was in that last scene, and this future is a bit like Waterworld. Tissues are hard to come by.
Well, actually, the canister contains another parasite which quickly leaps out and latches onto Rikus' goon. Meanwhile, after his attack, Paul wakes up with Demi Moore tending to his injuries.
Here, drink this. It's made from lemons.
All I know is lemons. You like lemons, right? Right? God help you if you say no. And if that isn't bad enough, Agent Amputate here seems to have tracked him down too. But he gets carjacked by Mullet Man and his boys before he can catch him.
The gun! Drop the gun! Christ, a merchant.
Hang on, merchant? Like what? He's gonna charge you for kicking your ass or what?
Ah, right. Merchants are the name of the government that now controls the world. Yeah, thanks to IMDb for telling me that. And what the agent actually wants of the parasites. And about this being the apocalypse in the first place, because this movie sure doesn't explain most of that. Which really made lines like this, which had absolutely no context put to them, really confusing.
And all that atomic shit started falling out of the skies.
You see that scar face? They gave me that. That was my brand. Because I worked in the suburbs. The suburbs was where they put orphans like me to work.
Which puts me in a bit of a weird situation, because on the one hand, I do like how there's no text wall plot dump we have to sit through, but everybody's talking like we should already know exactly what's going on. I hate movies that do that. I'm looking at you, Warcraft.
So we actually do get some story now, as Paul explains that he needs to get the second parasite back before it reproduces via millions of spores, which will pretty much infect the remainder of the human population.
Although they are going to have to compete with Nick Copus's Day of the Triffids miniseries. The second parasite in question has just finished munching away on young John C. Reilly here, and has now moved on to Rikus' girlfriend while they were all sleeping. Jeez, and there's me barely able to sleep when there's a spider in the house. And look at that fucking thing! It looks like somebody had a nightmare about a crocodile having an orgy with a lamprey and Petey Piranha. And speaking of blood-sucking leeches, that guy from the government finally arrives at Demi Moore's place, and is about to give her that expensive plastic surgery operation 30 years early, but Rikus arrives just in time to save her. Because I guess he's the only one allowed to sexually assault her.
Also, Paul has apparently just remembered that he can kill the parasites with high-pitched sound. Great! Now all we need is a bell tower and a dozen metal tubes.
Oh, come on. Now it's moving on to poor Vivian Blaine? But she only had 2 years till retirement.
Don't worry, Vivian. We'll get the makeup crew in here. You won't notice a thing.
Paul and Demi Moore arrive back at the hotel, and they better get their story straight if they want to avoid having any of this mess appearing on their bill. After bagging the parasite and extracting a fluid sample that somehow gives Paul the audio frequency he needs to kill the one in his gut. Did that count as a sex scene? Did I need to censor it?
It's over.
Not yet. Not till we kill the other one.
It is still in the bag, right? Hell no, I wasn't gonna hold on to that thing. It was covered in old lady's face.
However, the agent appears again and starts a final showdown with our hero. But irony is on Paul's side as a parasite crawls over and attacks the agent instead.
Ah, throwing herself off a building before the medical bill arrives. Smart tactic.
Shoot at the tank!
Oh boy, here we go again.
Smile, you son of a bitch!
And so after a man with a sack on his head replaces our villain for his death scene, this movie comes to an end with Paul inevitably bleeding to death from that massive open hole in his abdomen.
And that was Parasite. Considering the budget and all, this actually isn't really a bad movie, to be honest. It's just very, very slow in the beginning, and it only gets slightly faster in around the middle, and then around the last 10 minutes, everything happens at once, and then it just sort of ends.
It's also kind of strange, but the film feels like a sequel to a film that doesn't exist because everyone keeps referencing stuff that we haven't seen happen, but that seems to have occurred before the film started. It's weird, and I actually find that much more interesting than some of the parts in the film itself.
I didn't really have much of a problem with anything else. The acting was pretty solid, although surprisingly Demi seemed the weakest link there. But hey, early days. And as someone who has a very real phobia of leeches, I found the Parasite pretty damn horrifying, and that's definitely what they were going for. Well, I need to go pump myself full of Advocate now. But yeah, cheers for joining me, Seb.
No problem, man, my pleasure. And hey, if you ever hear about Bradley Cooper's first starring role being about a film of alien beer bottles creating an army of hungover zombies, well, then you know who to call.
And that's all from me for tonight, so I'm Fedora, this is Oh the Horror, save a screen for me, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Worms in the garden. Worms in the ground. There are worms in the garden underground. There are worms, and they've made a little town. And they wriggle and they giggle and they help the garden grow when the rain comes down.